So joining me now is good friend of the show, my friend Tom Harris from the International Climate Science Coalition. This is week 3 of what the heck is going on at what's called COP28. It's the annual UN climate change conference for the normal people. Tom, thanks for coming on the show. Every year at these things, I just cringe at how hypocritical they are. They go to some of the more opulent places of the world. Everybody flies private. And they go there to tell you that you need to drive a smaller car, freeze in the dark, and have a low-flow shower head that doesn't get the soap out of your hair. Did the same thing happen again this year? I'm pretty sure it did, right?
Yeah, even more than usual. It's interesting. I went to the Copenhagen COP back in 2009. And it was, believe it or not, the biggest climate conference. Actually, it was the biggest conference of any kind ever held on Earth. They had 30,000 delegates. And yet this one has 70,000.
Yeah, because it's nicer. It's nicer than Copenhagen. I just came back from Dubai. And so I know this is a place that is impossible without fossil fuels, either from the revenue and economic wealth generated by fossil fuels, but also the cooling, the heating, the enormous structures that they build just to build them. You know, you don't build a man-made island where you have luxury condos. You don't do that without fossil fuels. So the idea that they've taken this the world's going to end conference to a place like Dubai to tell Dubai to phase out fossil fuels. Good luck to them.
Yeah. I hope you don't mind my dog barking in the background.
Oh, it's fine.
At least you know I'm a real person.
Yep.
But yeah, and it's sad because at the beginning of the conference, you're right, Al Jaber, just before the conference started, you were talking about this last week with Michelle, said some extremely sensible things. He said, the science does not back the idea that we can limit temperature to 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels, by getting rid of fossil fuels. And that's exactly right. In fact, on my shelf here, right behind me, is climate change, fossil fuels. So the real catastrophe that would happen is, in fact, if we get off fossil fuels. So at the beginning of the conference, I had really high hopes that the Arabs and the OPEC countries would stick to their guns and say, no, we're not going to have any reference in here to fossil fuels. And indeed, that was the case for the first 2 drafts. But the other delegates went berserk, they just went crazy. And you saw that 12-year-old that ran up front and got all that attention. And sadly, they gave her a lot of attention. But in the final analysis, they didn't actually call for a phase out of fossil fuels or even a phase down. I'll have the text here. It says the text calls for, and this is exactly the quote, transitioning away from fossil fuels in energy systems in a just, orderly, and equitable manner, accelerating action in this critical decade so as to achieve net zero by 2050 in keeping with the science. Now, it's interesting. The way it was worded, it gives them the option of continuing to use fossil fuels after 2050 as long as they are focused on the net zero thing. So in other words, they can have carbon sequestration, carbon dioxide sequestration underground, which is, of course, insane. I mean, who would ever want to do that? It makes no sense because carbon dioxide is plant food and it'll increase the cost of electricity massively, of course. So I guess the Arab countries, the OPEC countries figured, well, this gives us an out, As long as we're headed towards net zero, we can keep using fossil fuels after 2050. Now, the bottom line, though, is that in the long run, that means no coal, Because you might remember Bob Murray, who was the head of Murray Energy. He testified before the U.S. Congress, and that was a coal company, a coal mining company. And he said specifically, carbon capture and sequestration, or carbon dioxide capture and sequestration, it really means no coal because the prices go so high, nobody would ever build a coal station again. And of course, that's their goal. They want to see no more coal. And yet coal is a wonderful source of energy. I showed you last time.
China. Just ask
exactly.
China.
It's a great source of energy. And if you use proper pollution control devices, it's perfectly fine. There's no reason not to use coal and to keep using coal. In fact, coal is what should be used as our base load energy in addition to nuclear and hydro, because if you use natural gas for all of your base load, that's really a reverse Midas touch. That's turning gold into lead. Because, natural gas is a special fuel. It's great for home heating. It's great for making all sorts of things, pharmaceuticals and stuff. But, coal is much less expensive if you don't put ridiculous regulations on it. So we should be wanting to use coal. A good example is what happens when you stop using coal happened in Ontario. We had a quarter of our electricity coming from coal, and we had pretty low rates. Dalton McGuinty in 2002, he said, "This is old technology." He had a big pile of coal on a desk, which is just theater. And of course, coal is not technology. Coal is a resource. It's how you burn it that matters. And he said, "We're going to get rid of it." And he did. He got from 25%. We got now 0% from coal, and our electricity prices doubled and in some cases tripled, depending on the time frame. Largely because we got rid of our least expensive source of energy, our least expensive source for electricity. So, and it's also super reliable. I mean, if you think about it, you keep at least like a year's supply right on site. You're not reliant on pipes coming in, supplying you with natural gas. Now, I'm not speaking against natural gas because it's a wonderful fuel, no question about it. But coal actually gives you that additional security of keeping all that resource right there on your site.
Oh, hey, what you just saw there is a clip from my weekly full-length show, The Gunn Show. It airs on Wednesday, but this is the internet. You can watch it whenever you feel like. You just have to become a subscriber to our paywalled premium content. Just go to rebelnewsplus.com to become a member today.